number of uninvited guests. Most of them have been asked to leave and have. I know there are a few remaining. If they want to sit here quietly and listen to this, that's fine. If they cause any difficulty, they'll be escorted out. I would like to take this opportunity to present some of the other people who have worked extremely hard to get this event together and who are working to get this show on the road of this class action suit that we feel is very vital to each and every one of us, including you. This guest speaker tonight will tell you some incredible stories, and I hope you attentively listen. And after he gets done talking, we'll have a break, and then we will have refreshments, and then we'll come back and there'll be a question and answer period. So please, due to the time and due to the length of what he wants to communicate to you, no questions when Mr. Flynn talks in the first half. Well, Val, I'll introduce you last since you're going to introduce Mr. Flynn. Let's see. Hannah Whitfield. Could you bring Hannah in, please? And Gerry Whitfield. This is not a serious event. Probably everything that has transpired leading up to it has been somewhat serious. Okay, Hannah Eltringham is working on this. Her husband Gerry is working on this. Mary Marin back there has been very, very busy. Very busy. Very effective lady. And Fred Stansfield, where's Fred? Fred wrote the last issue. He was the editor. Hey, Fred. Come on up, you guys. Anyway, I want to just acknowledge these people. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Val now. You know, some wise person once said, never leave your enemy with nothing to lose.
Tonight we begin a new rundown. The end of endless church harassment. Okay, after the lecture you can purchase copies of the cassettes. We'll try to make them for you right away. Or you can order cassettes or videos. You all have copies of the pledge. I want to make it clear that you don't have to pledge money to join the suit. You are represented when you sign. Don't feel embarrassed or rejected if you don't have money. We know who fleeced you. Anyone who agrees with any one or more of the claims is eligible. You have three choices: your name, your money, or both. Take extra pledges, take them with you, take them home, and get your friends to sign. Every name counts. Tonight, for those of you who are in agreement with this, and you don't have to be, let's create the intention, but by the end of the evening, we have enough names to start the action on Monday. And those of you who are listening to the tape and the video will create a second wave that will bring your cause, our cause, to fruition in a very short time. Okay. When I first met Mike Flynn in 1983, he spoke to a group of 125 questioning Scientologists. We had seen that we'd been lied to about some things by the Church of Scientology. We dared to question if we'd been lied to even about Michael Flynn. So we asked him to speak for himself. As a result, he made a lot of friends. He spoke here again in 1984 in 1985. And all these are available on tape. At the 1983 meeting, someone asked if we could do a class action suit, and Flynn said yes. It's been a 3-year lag, but we've grown tremendously in that time. And now, we're ready. There's no question anymore if we were lied to. Decide again tonight for yourself. In almost 24 lawsuits involving the Church of Scientology, Mike Flynn has not lost one. He's competent, and he's ours. Here's Mike.
Thank you. As the leader of the anti-religious movement in the United States, who is single-handedly destroying religion in America, I would like to thank the people who own and operate this very appropriately Jewish synagogue, and I say appropriately because of the history of persecution of that group, who have apparently welcomed or made the decision to allow me to speak to you when a religious institution with 6 million people, the Church of Scientology, has apparently represented to this synagogue that I am destroying religion in America. Someone apparently had the courage to at least hear what I had to say.
I think this is on all of our minds. No. Can we be assured that you're going to lay off LRH, right? And the down, right? Down. It's a fair question. Answer it. Lay off LRH. Is that fair?
Put the handcuffs on them. Disturbing the players.
Is only church management. Every mile of the check, you're mistaken that the check is science fiction nonsense. How can we trust you? How can we trust you?
Can I have my turn?
You're just here to make money. Mr. Flynn, have you people are all duped.
Thank you. It is the creed of the Church of Scientology, apparently, which is part of the tech, of which this gentleman and others apparently believe, apparently very wholeheartedly, that all men have the right to think freely, to utter their own opinions, to utter opinions on the opinions of other men, is, I believe, how Mr. Hubbard wrote it. and they have inalienable rights to their own sanity, to their own defense, and to speak. That gentleman had his right to speak. I, too, have my right to speak. The church has sued myself and my colleagues, as you know, I don't even know what it's up to now, 13 to 17 times, for speaking. I was informed by members of my office that I am going to be sued for tonight's speech. My lawyer, Mr. Rob Kilborn, who happens to be present, not by my request but by his own volition, asked me before the speech what I was going to talk about. And I told him I didn't know yet. And if I didn't know, how was the church going to sue me for something that they knew I was going to say before it had been said? In uttering my opinions, some of my opinions over the years have differed perhaps with some of you as they differ with this gentleman. And there's a lot of history to cover. And it's going to be very difficult in the very short period of time I have tonight to cover that history. But we can focus to some degree, and I'm going to assume in what I have to say that many of you have heard what I've said before, so I will try not to duplicate what I've said before. But there is a very essential message that must be given to you and to the people who run the Church of Scientology. And that is that I have a right to speak, just as they have a right to speak. I have a right to talk about what I have found to be misrepresentations, the host of which I have talked about in prior speeches. They can disagree with me. They have the right to disagree with me, but they do not have the right, by a concerted plan, by contacting the people who run this temple, by following me with private detectives all over the United States, by suing me 13 to 17 times, one of which was a week or so ago, by threatening me with a lawsuit to appear here, by framing me with the alleged forgery of a $2 million check on L. Ron Hubbard, by stealing 20,000 documents from my office premises, by invoking the fair game doctrine against myself, my clients, by harassing me, harassing other independents. They do not have the right to prevent us from thinking and uttering our own opinions and speaking about them. Now, if my message was so devoid of truth, then any simple-minded individual would just let me prattle away and would not spend the millions of dollars. And I would estimate somewhere between 5 and 15 million to date to try to prevent me from speaking. They would not spend the millions of dollars that were spent, for example, in the Armstrong case alone to prevent me from having the documents that were L. Ron Hubbard's and the church documents released to you people so you could read them. The truth is that since 1982, when Gerry Armstrong was sued, we have defended him and won and sought to obtain release of those documents while they have sought to conceal them. The reason they have sought to conceal them is because the documents are devastating to what has been told to you. An independent person who is not a Scientologist may read these documents and might say, so he romanticized his background, so he lied about whether he was a nuclear physicist.
But Mr. Flynn, what about the death of
when we all know that we have all told lies. We have all told half-truths. There is no man or woman living that has lived for any length of time who has not been completely truthful in life to himself, the people around him. There are those who are well-intentioned who strive for that, who make mistakes and try to correct the errors. But there is no one who has not made mistakes. So someone who is looking at L. Ron Hubbard's life might say, so he made a few mistakes. And I would agree with that person, because we've all done that. But look at his legacy. Look at the legacy of L. Ron Hubbard. All of you who have been through life repair, who have found, at least in my opinion, the beginning stages of auditing, truth within yourselves and confronted those hidden deceits and hidden lies within you, found what you believe to be the legacy of L. Ron Hubbard. And you followed it, and you're here tonight because of it. And it's a true legacy, because L. Ron Hubbard is like every man. There is both goodness and error in him as in all of us. Now that he is dead, it is perhaps even more important to look at his legacy. And the legacy is the dichotomy, I submit, between that creed of the Church of Scientology and the code of a Scientologist that talks about those aspirations that we all adhere to, that were the foundation mark of this country, that all men are created equal, and they have the right to split apart from a government or an agency or an entity that oppresses them, whether it's the King of England, the Guardian's office, the CMO, whatever it is that oppresses them, they have the right to separate from it, liberate themselves, and pursue a legacy that they find in their own heart is true. The suppression of that pursuit is the harm. The suppression of having me speak is the harm. I could get up here and speak and say things that are ridiculous, and you can discount them and throw them away, and you won't be harmed. The Church of Scientology can get up and say things. You can believe them. You can pay $400,000 through the OT levels. You can spend 20 years of your life, and you can find out you were lied about your PC folders' confidentiality. You were told some untruths about the background of L. Ron Hubbard. The critical inquiry becomes, were the lies so significant, the misrepresentations so significant that they severely affected my life? If I believed he was a nuclear physicist, though someone might say, big deal, so he's not a nuclear physicist. But suppose I believed it and it was propagated for 35 years to sell things, to sell me, to sell another physicist on the tech, to make it all scientific. Then to that person, that misrepresentation becomes an extremely significant thing, because a big part of their life, their personality, that subscribed to that, pursued something that was untrue. And the pursuit of truth is what the Church of Scientology is supposed to be about. So the question becomes, in inquiring into the legacy of L. Ron Hubbard, who is a Scientologist? What is the Church of Scientology? Is it the people who subscribe to that creed? Or is it the Guardian's office that perpetrates the fair game doctrine that says lie to, sue, cheat, and destroy? Or attack the attacker that says feed lurid blood, sex crimes to the press? Or the black PR policy that says take an item of truth and expand it to destroy someone? Or the Guardian's office hat packs, where they train people to lie, where they train people to harass? Which is the legacy? Who is the Scientologist? The one that subscribes to the view that I have the right to speak? Or the one who was sent here tonight to prevent me from speaking? If you ask yourself, well, the Scientologist is the one, it's me. It's me who paid $5, $10, $15,000, $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 to get through the OT levels. To find truth. Time, place, form, and event. Truth. Then those are the people who were motivated and intentioned by those ideals that are in the creed. But just hypothetically, suppose, like in most things in life, there's a flip side to good, perpetrated by those who would use good and manipulate good people for bad reasons. For greed, to get money, to control those people's lives, for power. Instead of liberating them, even though they've taken you $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to liberate you, to then control you to get another 10 or 15. Who is the Scientologist in that instance? Is it the person who is paying the money who believes that they're going to arrive at truth? Or is it the person who's taken the money to manipulate you? To send it to Swiss bank accounts, or Liechtenstein, or Luxembourg, or to create guardians' offices, or to break into federal office buildings, or to harass Paulette Cooper, or to harass Michael Flynn, or Fred Stansfield, or some gentleman named Notaro. To use an institution to suppress those people who created the institution to liberate them. Then who is the Scientologist? The inquiry must at this point be made. If I pay $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, what's ever been paid in the last 2 weeks to follow Michael Flynn, with as many as 3 carloads of private detectives, while I've had the first vacation that I've had, major vacation I've had in 6 years of litigating against people who I conceive are trying to harass my clients. While my wife and I are on vacation and staying at a local hotel and staying in room 258, and Alfred Bay and Eugene Ingram and his associates rent room 256, which is what they did. Or use 3 carloads of private detectives right up on my bumper to follow me everywhere I go, to harass me, to emotionally and mentally unnerve me so that I won't do what I'm doing. Is that appropriate conduct? Is it appropriate to use your money to finance those activities for doing what I'm doing, which we will look into? Or is it appropriate to tell me that I'm going to be sued before I've even spoken, or be arrested for soliciting clients, which is what I understand I'm going to be arrested or sued for? If their purpose is to disseminate truth, why can't they tolerate what I have to say? Is it that harmful? Why do they have to pay millions of dollars to perpetually sue me, perpetually harass me with my wife, who is extremely upset over this ordeal, or send private detectives to the hotels that I go to? Is that a Scientologist? Is that a church? To hire Eugene Ingram, who was removed for the LA police department for pimping, pandering, running a house of prostitution, and aiding narcotics dealers? Their chief worldwide investigator, who paid $25,000 to a fellow now sitting in a German prison, formerly an Italian prison, to sign an affidavit, who's under indictment for perjury, that I forged the $2 million check of L. Ron Hubbard? With L. Ron Hubbard or the church's money, they pay a fellow $25,000 who did it to say I did it with him? To some degree, you are what your friends are. To some degree, birds of a feather do flock together. To some degree, I find it peculiarly apt that whoever hired Eugene Ingram would hire that individual. So who is the Scientologist? Is it Fred Stansfield, Valerie Stansfield, and you people? Is it David Miscavige, Pat Broker, Norman Starkey, Lyman Spurlock, in control of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, who don't want Michael Flynn to speak? And who do I represent? Tanya Burden, who left when she was 17, who coded and decoded telexes under Operation Snow White to infiltrate the United States government at the age of 15 when she should have been in math class? Who put L. Ron Hubbard's pants on and off every day and followed him around collecting his ashes from his cigarette butts? Who has no education? Who is living as a Keno runner in Nevada? I mean, what is the threat? Because she lost her educational opportunities? She gave 5 years of non-stop work in the EPF, the RPF, the CMO, to further what she thought was Scientology, and then found out that she had been lied to, that the things that she told she was going to get, she never got. Paulette Cooper, who was framed. Gerry Armstrong, who found the truth in Hubbard's own documents, and the church came down on him with armies of lawyers. And I spent 2 months in Los Angeles defending him to release documents that they want to conceal. Who is a Scientologist? Gerry Armstrong, who sought to release; David Miscavige, who sought to conceal. The information in your PC folders. Sacred information about your lives, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, if you care to believe it, your past lives. Michael Flynn, the anti-religious destroyer of religion, who was against autonomy, is now defending and speaking and willing to represent those people who gave the information in those sessions confidentially, to preserve the sanctity of those sessions, because it was represented to you that that information was confidential. When if you look at the documents, and I won't bother to pull them out, but they're all over the United States, what the Guardian's office did and what the people in control continue to do with PC folders. So you want your own information back. You want your own PC folders back. Most of the people who come to me come with no money, with no PC folders, having spent 6 years of their lives working for an institution that's now worth hundreds of millions, and ask me for help to correct the injustices of having their PC files culled, of being told that it was confidential, of being told about L. Ron Hubbard and his background, about being told what the church would do. They come for me for help when they have nothing left. So because I represent them, I get sued by David Miscavige and his cronies for representing these people. Who's the Scientologist? Is it the Scientologist who adheres to the creed? Is it the Scientologist who pursues the fair game doctrine? Who hires private detectives? Who hires armies of lawyers? Who propagates ridiculous things, like paying a known perjurer $25,000 to claim that I forged a $2 million check. To use that money for those purposes. To attack the attacker. To feed lurid blood sex crime to the press. To run constant operations on me and my clients. The reason I asked you to ask this question is because it has to do with my solicitation. The solicitation I'm going to make to you tonight. The solicitation for, quote, clients that they're going to sue me for. I don't need any more clients. All I've done is lost money. My wife, my family, my friends, my colleagues, everyone tells me, just pursue your practice. Forget these issues. Forget representing these people. All you've got is harassment. 6 years. Longer than World War II. So I come here tonight because I've been asked by Fred and Valerie to talk to you. Which they are going to say, I'm here soliciting clients. Well, we can put the issue to bed. As the leader of the anti-religious movement, I'm here to solicit converts. I'm here to solicit Scientologists. Those people who believe in that creed, who spent years of your life creating this organization, it is now time to be a Scientologist. It is now time to get your PC folders back and preserve yours and their integrity. It is now time to seek justice. Justice being correcting the lies, exposing the financial manipulation, auditing the auditors, auditing in a legal sense, and auditing in a Scientological sense. Where has the money gone? What has it been used for? Unveil the mysteries. Unveil the lies. Give us back our PC folders. Give us back our money. Give us back compensation for the years of toil and labor to create this organization so that we again can be Scientologists. To follow that creed, to keep confidential PC folders, to use money so that other people can speak freely and utter their own opinions, and to not use an institution to oppress you or me or anyone. That's what I'm soliciting. I'm soliciting justice. I'm soliciting the belief in you people, and those things that got you involved in Scientology. It is appropriate. It is just for those who paid money, for those who created this monolith that does what it does, for you who has a responsibility to seek justice, to correct the injustices. Because I tell you, there are injustices. There are people like me, myself, who have been framed, who should not be followed with my wife by carloads of private detectives, who should not have to get a hotel room where they move in their private detectives next to me. You don't want a police state. You don't want the GO. You don't want the culling of your PC folders. You have a responsibility as having created this organization, having been Scientologists, to make the people who are doing that Scientologists again. And for that I throw out a message to David Miscavige and Fat Croker, to Earl Cooley and John Peterson, to Stephen and Sherman Linson, to Norman Starkey and Lyman Spurlock, to Terry Gamboa. I have a message. The message is, now is the time to correct the falsehoods, to correct the oppression, to correct the injustice, to avoid litigation, to avoid a class action, to avoid using theirs and yours millions of dollars to hire more armies of lawyers and perpetuate this stupidity, as all lies are. And it is so easy for them to do it. If you want your PC folder back, let them give it to you. If you want your money back because when they represented that the church was a tax-exempt organization, they represented that it was fulfilling the purposes of the operational test under the Internal Revenue Code, which is stripping their tax exemption so that you lose your tax deductions because they did not operate as a non-profit organization, because money should not have been going for the benefit of private people, whether it was L. Ron Hubbard or whoever. So that if you want your money back, they give it to you. Because they confront, as all Scientologists are trained to do, to confront truth, confront data, confront fact, confront what the GO did, confront what they're now doing. Give you your PC folders back if you want them back. That's justice. Give you your money back if you want your money back. That's justice. It belongs to you because you're the Scientologist if you believe in that creed. If you seek justice and struggle for it and fight for it, you'll get it. To David Miscavige and Norman Starkey and all the others, they can confront. They have a duty as Scientologists to confront, to recognize overts and withholds, both personal and institutional. To correct the injustices that those overts and withholds have caused. They can avoid litigation. They can announce, very simply, for those who want their PC folders, we return them. a judge has decreed, Superior Court Judge Breckenridge, that the use of confidential information from PC folders has been taking place. There is such a judicial decree. We will agree that it's been done. It was an overt of the institution. We will return those PC folders to those people who want them back. That would be justice. That would be following the creed. Let them do it, and they will avoid litigation. The monies that you paid, let them return them to you. It will avoid litigation. The monies that were paid to unmercifully harass and destroy purported critics, let them fairly compensate them. That will do justice. For those people who have been denied tax deductions, let them pay those let them pay those amounts to the Internal Revenue Service. And I have numerous people who have contacted me with that problem. That would do justice. To stop the harassment, to fire the private investigators, that will be justice. I call for them to be Scientologists, to communicate, to confront, to avoid a class action suit. The problems will be resolved. The triangle, the ARC triangle, will be created. And there'll be peace again. Suppose they choose not to. Suppose they choose to use their hundreds of millions of dollars to assert more power and more control, and to hire more private investigators and more lawyers. There is a responsibility. I was never a member of the Church of Scientology. I have no trouble with the creed. As not being a former member, I do not have a duty as sacred as yours to correct the injustices of which I speak. I have a duty to represent those people who have been wrong. But you have a duty. You have a responsibility to correct those problems and those injustices. In your hearts, that is the responsibility that you must confront. If you believe, if you find the data, if you confront the data, that David Miscavige and others who now run this organization have done and are doing what you know to be true, and what I know to be true, then you have a duty to tell everybody that now that the hidden data line is gone, that it is your responsibility, their responsibility, to audit management. It will no longer suffice via the hidden data line that this is Ron's will. The only will you will see now is the will of the private investigators, the lawyers, and the people in control to continue to control and manipulate. It is your responsibility to audit those people, to seek an accounting, to find out whether there's been a breach of the fiduciary duties and responsibilities and oaths and representations that were made to you. It is very important that you don't fail in fulfilling that duty. Because if you don't, the monster will grow. The power will get bigger. And in this century, as I speak in this synagogue, in this temple, we have seen what power in the people who created this, the religious ethic that created this temple. Those people, perhaps more so than any other people, have seen what oppression, violation, injustice, turning your face as your neighbor is taken from his home. The people who created this temple have seen how big the monster can get if they do not confront reality. Once you hire private detectives to do what they've done, once you hire and create guardians' offices to do what they've done, once you hoard away hundreds of millions in bank accounts to manipulate and control, once you take in charge and assert and make you believe that you have to pay $200,000 to have your consciousness raised, your being expanded, and you use that money to control the people who gave it, you created a monster. And it's your responsibility to undo that creation. What the class action is about, if it becomes necessary, is a monitoring, an auditing, an accounting by a court that sets the rules of what has gone on with this organization and the people who now run it, and what they've done with your money, with your lives, with your information, and what they should continue to do with it in the future. If you've spent years, in some cases like Fred Stansfield since 1951 or so, supporting, creating, believing in the creed, if you have evidence that the creed's been broken, if there is truly criminal activity, if it, as it has been rumored, there will be indictments, as there have been indictments and convictions of Mary Sue Hubbard and others in the past, of financial manipulation and mismanagement and fraud, you have a duty to act. You have a duty to tell everyone who created this organization to act.
Earl Cooley tried to get in here, but Mr. Flynn would not talk to him. I wonder why. That was the church attorney. He wanted to deliver a message to him, but he would not listen, or was too afraid to hear what he had to say.
Have to make an appointment.
If the message is that he's going to sue me again, I've heard that for 6 years. Mr. Cooley is a Johnny-come-lately. In one other speech to a few people in the home of the Stansfield, as the perpetrator of the anti-religious movement, I quoted the book of Isaiah, the Old Testament, which I will do again. If you people fulfill the creed, fulfill your duties to correct the injustices that you know and I know have taken place, then you will walk and not be weary, run and not be faint, and you will take up wings as eagles. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Flynn was invited here tonight by the steering committee to speak, and on the behalf of the steering committee of FAIR. There are 6 of us. You met all of us earlier at the beginning of the program. You'll be seeing more of us later. I'm sure a lot of people will. Refreshments will be served in a few moments. Before we get to that, let me tell you real quickly, if you wish to take a break and go outside the doors, that's fine. But we're not letting anybody back in for security reasons. So if you want to take a break and go outside, that's fine. But don't go all the way out if you want to hear the question and answers later on, when we'll have quite a few of those, I'm sure. Let me just check something here real quickly. How many people here are looking at becoming a part of that class action suit? That's a pretty hefty number. That's great. If those of you who are looking at becoming a part of it and want to get started on it right away, there's a table back here. There's also another table in the refreshment area where you can do so at the break. We'll probably be taking 30 to 40 minutes of a break, and enjoy yourself, have everything that you want there. Then we'll come back for questions and answers. Thank you very much for attending. Let's have a round of applause for Michael Flynn.
All right. Who's got a question? Yes.
Could you give us sort of a brief summary of things like the overseas bank accounts, Liechtenstein, Swiss bank accounts, etc., and some of the irregularities?
He asked for a brief summary of information about overseas bank accounts of the church.
What is on record in the various lawsuits so far, and I understand there's quite a bit more which I won't go into, but I'll give you what is on court records with regard to bank accounts. In the period of 1972-1973, an organization called Religious Research Foundation was created. Religious Research Foundation was nothing but a bank account in Liechtenstein. It provided no goods or services. It did nothing in terms of disseminating the tech, providing auditing. People who went to FLAG, as many of you know, who may have made out checks to Religious Research Foundation, had their goods and services provided by Church of Scientology of California during certain critical years, which owned FLAG, that corporate entity. Church of Scientology of California was a non-profit, tax-exempt organization, purportedly acting under the laws of the state of Florida and the United States. The funds, in fact, went to Religious Research Foundation, to Liechtenstein, and were, in fact, diverted, in some instances, directly to L. Ron Hubbard, which is what they call enormity. It is one of the tax laws that no part of the net earnings of a non-profit tax-exempt organization can inure to the benefit of a private shareholder. If it does, it loses its tax-exempt status. Millions of dollars were diverted. In addition to that, although L. Ron Hubbard had allegedly resigned from all church control and management, he had de facto control over that bank account. In excess of $100 million ended up in the bank account. In addition to that, the known evidence is that between May and November 1982, Howard Schomer personally transferred between $30 and $40 million from church accounts to Hubbard accounts. There has been an IRS civil investigation that's been ongoing for many years. And in fact, after a lengthy trial, the Church of Scientology of California was stripped of its tax-exempt status for, among other things, enormity. There is currently an IRS criminal investigation ongoing relating to the RRF issues, Religious Research Foundation issues, the transfer of the money by Howard Schomer, and other such control over church funds. In the event that those indictments are forthcoming and document in detail not only the items that I've just mentioned to you, but other such financial irregularities, some of which are on court records. For example, the payment of $250,000 of church funds to set up a federal judge in Tampa, Florida, by getting a yacht and putting hookers and drugs on the yacht and trying to lure the judge onto the boat. The use of church money for those types of operations is, as common sense would tell you, illegal. Those kinds of things would give great sustenance in terms of the evidentiary record for a suit by the group whose trust has been breached, namely yourselves, who believed that those funds were being used for legitimate purposes. In the event there is an indictment, in the event it does appear on the public record in even greater detail that there has been financial mismanagement of the type that I've just mentioned, of which I tell you there is hard evidence, then the evidentiary platform, the evidentiary basis for a suit such as the class action suit has extreme vitality. Because in the law, all of you people who gave to a non-profit tax-exempt organization that you believed was obeying all the laws with regard to the use of those funds, the breach of those laws, which strips the organization of its tax status, legally entitles you to regain what you lost. It is a very powerful evidentiary basis for a suit such as this one. In the evidence, this very specific evidence, such as provided by Howard Schomer, for example, such as provided by Laurel Sullivan, for example, such as provided by tape recordings of high-level church officials dealing with the diversion of monies, is very powerful evidence to support your case. Those are among the items of evidence. Yes, sir.
There's a statement from the Freedom newspapers to us in our mailboxes, or at least to a lot of us in our mailboxes, that tries to stir up our old fears of David Rockefeller and the world takeover linking you with support by David Rockefeller as one of his minions. Would you comment on that, please? Because I wonder what your viewpoint is.
I got it.
But they don't.
Oh, you have to, okay.
He's asked about the church's accusations about connections between the Rockefeller Foundation and Mr. Flynn.
As the head of the anti-religious movement, which David apparently subscribes to too, I'm happy to report that the church is willing to place me in that company. Now, there is incredible irony in this recent freedom in terms of the black PR policy of the Church of Scientology and my connection to the Rockefellers. Unfortunately, to protect a couple of very innocent people, I cannot tell you everything that I would like to tell you, but I will tell you this. In 1980-81, the Guardian's office created a report which people like Gerry Armstrong, Laurel Sullivan have seen. That report purports to link me with the Rockefellers. And it did it on the basis that I know a psychiatrist named Jack Clark, who was an evil perpetrator and kidnapper and torturer of people by deprogramming them. And because of my connection to Jack Clark had assisted a family, which is an offshoot of the Rockefeller family, in terms of what the organization had done to the daughter of that family. Now, timing is very critical in life. And prior to the summer of 1982, although I knew Jack Clark, I had absolutely no knowledge that anyone, the Rockefeller family is a very big family, that anyone in the Rockefeller family had been targeted by the Church of Scientology. The involvement of Hubbard in the 50s, I really knew nothing about. Apparently David Rockefeller was upset with L. Ron Hubbard for some reason. I don't know. I don't know David Rockefeller from Adam. I've never met him. I've never talked to him. I've never had any communication with him of any nature or description. That includes Nelson, Lawrence, etc. But a very curious thing occurred. In 1980 and 81, I had supported all of the litigation, which had then been going on for 3 years all by myself. And I had no other support. Gerry Armstrong came out in 82, and he brings this document, this geo-prediction report, eval. And in the document, there were references to this offshoot of the Rockefeller family, whose daughter had been used by the GO, apparently unwittingly. And in this prediction report, the church was endeavoring to connect me, for whatever reason they thought appropriate, to the Rockefeller family, which I am happy to be connected to. I mean, I'd like to be more connected. I hope they support the class action. But the ironic thing is I didn't know them from Adam. We were hurting for money. The report comes out, and the report is just nonsense. I mean, it's so ridiculous, it's almost funny. I gave the report, since Jack Clark is prominently mentioned and I knew Clark, I gave the report to Dr. Clark. Dr. Clark gave it to someone who knew this offshoot of the family. And if you read the report, you would be as outraged as this family was. Because the clear inference was that confidential information had been taken from this person's files. The clear inference was that clear breaches of trust had taken place in an effort to target people, to use the geo vernacular, to harass them. So I received a contact from a lawyer who wanted to know what this document was, who apparently had it somehow through another source, through Dr. Clark. And I told him. And he said, well, this is an outrage. How can they collect this kind of information and do this to these people? This girl never knew that this was being done. So then when subsequent litigation developed, the defense of which involved the protection not only in the exposure of that document, which is among the Armstrong exhibits, and the exposure of other such documents. And in other cases in which I was defending, similar issues arose. I received a donation from a trust in New York. The GO in their prediction report created a donor for me. And the people are the kindest, most loving, gentlest people that you could imagine. And they believed that someone like Gerald Armstrong, Paulette Cooper, and many others should be defended. So they gave me what is, in fact, in terms of the scope of this litigation, a paltry amount. An amount that has been swallowed up, that goes in 6 months of the litigation that's been involved. But they helped me, and they had the courage to help me. And now the associations that have been created in the Freedom magazine or newspaper, the Nazis and David Rockefeller, are just ridiculous. Those are the facts. Yes, sir.
What do you think is going to happen now with the probate of Hubbard's estate, and how do you think that's going to affect the cases that are ongoing in the IRS and any other investigations?
He's asked about the money from Hubbard's estate and what's going to be happening and how it will affect the cases.
Good question. Who owns the Church of Scientology?
I do.
There are numerous legal issues to answer your question. Numerous. To get into some of the more pertinent ones, I'll make a short effort. The bigger ones are so massive that they probably can't be answered in the little time we have. The Hubbard estate and the legal issues that involve the IRS investigation, involving the diversion of funds and the millions of dollars that have gone back and forth in bank accounts, and whether they should have and who owns them and how they're now going to be transferred to the church, involve extremely complex criminal issues, which I believe are going to be litigated very shortly. That proof in that criminal case, should it come to fruition, will be the proof in the pudding of your case. That you really own the Church of Scientology. That it is you who should end up with the assets, whether they're in Hubbard's estate, in Liechtenstein bank accounts, church bank accounts, controlled by Miscavige, and however they've gone back and forth. You have a claim to those funds in that estate. Because you are the church. for all of the reasons I talked about. In terms of some of the complex legal issues in probating that estate, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., Ronald DeWolf, has a claim. A disenfranchised, allegedly alienated son, the firstborn son of L. Ron Hubbard, who has his father's name, who he claims is a victim of the GO, is, I'm sure, going to make a claim. Alexis Valerie Hubbard Connolly, the daughter of L. Ron Hubbard and Sarah Norfolk, who they are claiming is not the daughter, is going to have a very interesting claim. The creditors of L. Ron Hubbard, the people who have sued him, the people who have been victimized by him, are going to have claims. But where justice lies, and for a moment I'll divert, where justice lies is a very simple thing in this overall litigation picture. You take the $39 million lawsuit. A girl, Julie Tichborne Christofferson, who's been involved for 3 months or 7 months and gives him $3,000, wins $39 million because a jury of your peers, 12 men and women, when they hear the PC file culling and the GO activities and training guardians office agents to harass people, and all of the things we've talked about, and the diversion of funds to RRF, and the falsity of the documents like what your fees by, that L. Ron Hubbard made less than an org staff member. When the jury heard all that, they were confronted with a very unique problem. Does Julie Christofferson deserve $39 million? It's your money. And you're going to give it to one person? But under the law of punitive damages in this country, you have to punish such conduct so it won't be done again. So a jury spoke. And they came up with this incredible amount. The judge couldn't believe it. No one could believe it. But after listening to 12 or 11 weeks of testimony, hard day-to-day evidence, which you people could have had the right to sit in and listen to, they were shocked that a religion, that a church, as I've been shocked when I first saw the Washington documents, they were shocked that an organization was doing this. So they said, $39 million. Take it from the church even if you give it to this one person. The judge said basically, no, we can't do that. So it got overturned, and it's probably going to be retried. A lesser amount probably would have withstood. But the jury was so outraged in seeing hundreds of documented pieces of evidence of the type of conduct that I've alluded to and talked about tonight. But that Christofferson case raises an interesting issue. The timing of the class action is really now. A jury would hear, in your case, the same evidence. But they won't give it to little Julie Christofferson, this one person. They'll give it back to the people who own it. So in terms of the probating of the estate, in terms of this mishmash of these transfers of money back and forth, and who owns what? Who owns the notch material? Who owns solo knots? David Miscavige says David Mayo doesn't. And what I say, as I told David Mayo on the phone today, whoever paid, whatever amount of money they paid, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 for solo knots. They own it. And your suit will prove that they own it. Your suit will contest ownership of a religious exercise which they say is copyrighted, trademarked, that you have to pay $100,000 for, and that you can only get from them after you've paid the money, and that you can't continue to exercise and practice that belief. Balderdash. Yes, sir.
Disregarding the validity of the suit or not, when we put our names to it, aren't we letting ourselves in for the same thing that's been happening to you?
Yes.
The detectives, all that stuff?
He asked if we sign our names to the class action suit, are we letting ourselves in for harassment?
Yes. But there's many of you. There's only so many private investigators that can be hired. Yes.
Mr. Flynn, you mentioned earlier about the crimes that the church management had done, the horrendous crimes that you keep talking about. I'd like you to comment that those same management people are now your clients. Martin Samuels, David Mayo, Gerry Armstrong. Those were all the people that were in church management.
Good question. Good question.
He's asking about people who were in church management, who committed some of these crimes, who are now Mike Flynn's clients.
First, we'll run through my list of clients. Tanya Berger. She was a servant. Laurel Sullivan, a servant of L. Ron Hubbard. Not in the Guardian's office. Public relations officer of L. Ron Hubbard. Carol Garrity, Janie Peterson. 2GO, not B1. Public relations and the branch that social coordination, who committed crimes. And they came to me, and they signed affidavits. And they said, well, look, I paid my $33,000, and I paid my $66,000, and I got sucked in. And after I was in for X amount of time, they put me in the GO. Yeah, and I culled Tanya Burden's PC files. And I took them to Sherman Fredericks at the Las Vegas Review-Journal. They admitted they did it. They gave validity to what I'm saying. They confronted that overt. They confronted that wrongdoing. In my judgment, they warranted protection. All my other clients are public, low-level staffers, with the exception, perhaps, of Martin Samuels. Gerry Armstrong, non-GO, C organization, a servant, worked to perpetuate Scientology. Martin Samuels created an enterprise in Oregon to perpetuate Scientology. And then, and this is the unique aspect of Samuel's case, as it is unique to many people in this group, I believe. As soon as he got in a position of strength, as soon as he built what he believed in, even though he was a mission holder, non-GO, non-staff, a mission holder. As soon as he built it, It was stripped from him and fed the power of Miscavige.
That's bullshit. I work directly with you.
Don't take her out. Please, don't miss. Sir, hopefully enough to compensate me for all my troubles and my clients. Martin Samuels. To answer this now absent woman, I wish she hadn't yelled. I wish she had stood up and made her position clear. She had a position. If she contested what I said, I wish she hadn't done that. And I wish she would come back and say factually in the record what her position is. Bring her back. I will give you a few details about Martin Samuels. Bring her back if she will talk and lay facts out, and she won't yell. Bring her back in.
If I repeat something, it's for the videos. She's gone.
Martin Samuels, look at the result. Look at the result. He creates these huge organizations that are worth millions of dollars. And anyone in this organization who knows Martin, who knows the situation, will know that I am telling you the truth. He gets gang-bang sec-checked. He gets stripped of his organizations, and he is left penniless. Not a sou. Miscavige ends up with the organizations, ends up with the bank accounts, ends up with control. Martin loses his wife, his children, and what he's devoted 13, 14 years of his life to. So look at the result. The church can claim, as they have, I'm sure, in many of your declares, and only those of you who have been declared with those ridiculous, false allegations that have been made in your declares. And those of you who have been subjected to them, you know what I'm talking about. You know it's bullshit.
Right, exactly.
Can come in and allege that he did this, that he mismanaged, and he did this wrong, and he did that wrong. Maybe he did do things wrong. But he created this huge organization for Hubbard and the church, and believe me when I tell you, in his heart, he felt he was doing it for L. Ron Hubbard. And then, because there was a power struggle, he got stripped of everything. His wife, his children, his family, his 13 years of work. Now you tell me, what was that issue about? The perpetuation of the faith or money?
Money.
Next question.
I want to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
I came here as a confused Scientologist, and I guess maybe many people like me here get some answers, know where to go. And I deeply believe in Scientology, I deeply believe in LRH. And you say in your quote, you say that Scientology is a fraud and LRH is a fraud, and you kind of insisted of saying the same thing here. So I just wonder if the people here around, they agree with you.
Okay. He said that he is a deeply, believes in Scientology and in LRH. and says that he understood that Mike Flynn said that Scientology and LRH was a fraud, and he wants an answer to understand what that means.
Thank you. I have a great deal of respect for that question and your willingness in an atmosphere that I basically control because I'm the speaker, of getting up and confronting what I'm talking about. When I say that L. Ron Hubbard or Scientology is a fraud, I will repeat what I said earlier. We are all human beings. We all make mistakes. We all have good and bad. We all have overts and withholds. When you take an overt and you perpetuate the overt to perpetuate your power, rather than confront the overt at the risk of losing that power, whether it's money or power itself, you have become a fraud. You have not confronted what was a lie. It is inappropriate to say, in a generic sense, and by that I mean the broad sense, L. Ron Hubbard is a fraud. L. Ron Hubbard was a human being. But it is also appropriate to say that if he lied about numerous things in his background, those were fraudulent statements by a human being. If those statements were perpetuated for the control of power, then that is a level of fraud that is even more significant than the original misstatement. If you divert millions of dollars into your own bank accounts, when you say in writing, in documents such as where your fees by, that he has received less than an org staff member, that's a fraudulent statement. If L. Ron Hubbard gave you auditing, in the e-meter, in life repair, in OT3 if you believe in it, in solo knots if you believe in it, and he gave you those things that in your heart gave you yourself in your own truth, then those things are not a fraud. But then if he used, or people around him used, the funds that you bought or paid for to perpetuate power, then you've created an institution that perpetuates fraud. And like most people, like most institutions, you've got to confront your mistakes. It goes to the legacy of L. Ron Hubbard. History will tell you whether, in a generic sense, as you raise, L. Ron Hubbard's a fraud. Or history will tell you L. Ron Hubbard gave you auditing, in life repair, in New Hope. Or history will tell you that the fair game doctrine, in the Guardian's office, in PC file culling, was so aberrational and so wrong as to overshadow the first. In that when the issue became purely money in a power struggle in 1981, and if the legacy is that these, the money, the power, the greed, the fair game doctrine, attack the attacker, GO activities, predominate over you, who are the Scientologists who believe in the creed and in the auditing. If this predominates, then generically it's a fraud. If the legacy is that this predominates, then truth, as it always does, emerges over evil and wrong. And that's what will live. But if you think that it's easily arrived at, and that you just should sit back. And because the legacy can be good, and accept everything that's told to you, forget all the overts, and not correct the bad, you will allow a legacy to continue which will be generically fraudulent. If you do the other, you will create a legacy that was part of L. Ron Hubbard. Lawsuits like people like life. Civil litigation. A doctor gets sued because he made a mistake. He was negligent. And a person is paralyzed from the neck down. You say as a jury, there's too many medical malpractice cases. The doctors are too picked up. The person whose respirator shut off because it was improperly set, who has now left 3 children and is paralyzed from the neck down because the doctor wanted to go play golf. And he cared more about playing golf than taking care of this patient. He may be a good doctor, but what he did to this person was wrong, and the law compensates. If he did it again and again, then it is such an overt, and he has left such a trail of victims, that punitive damages come into play. That's life, that's law, that's justice. It is inappropriate to use, in the sense that you've raised, sir, an all-encompassing generic statement, in the sense that you are thinking L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology are a fraud. But it is necessary to inquire as a Scientologist, as someone who confronts truth, that if L. Ron Hubbard did deliver so much truth, how could he lie about so many things? Which I say he did. And it's not because I'm a better human being than L. Ron Hubbard or worse. It's because I represent people who've been victimized by it. And I've seen the documents. And I know it to be true that there were monumental lies told. The issue becomes, as I earlier stated, how they affected lives that believed them when it's found out that they're false, how they affect the motivations and intentions of the people who subscribe to those falsehoods, but more significantly, how it reveals the motives and intentions of the people who perpetuate the falsehoods. If a falsehood once confronted is not recognized to be such, then you do L. Ron Hubbard a disservice. You do Scientology a disservice. In that fact, you recognize every minute of an auditing session. That's what life's all about.
You are enemy of the principles of Scientology.
There's nothing more I can say. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Which one?
Yes, sir, you.
Okay, I want to say something and I want to ask something. All right? And then the thing I want to say is that those of you who are showing intolerance for speakers from the church or plants or whatever, and those of you who are waving your fingers and throwing out what amounts to various forms of hatred, I just want all of you to know that I find that as despicable here as I found it when I was in the church.
Did everyone hear that? Okay. The gentleman is absolutely correct. But the question in terms of articulating the position and giving me the opportunity to speak has to do with the issue of whether you're going to institutionally create so much disruption so that I can't speak. If there were people here who want to articulate a position, as this gentleman so ably did, and if people are being removed because of intolerance and repression, then it's wrong. But if a bigger organization has sent these people over, not to express their views, but to disrupt, and if that is their true intention, then the people who have organized this are left with no choice but to remove the disruption so that you and me can speak.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
All right, I agree with that. All right, now the question is simply, I don't know that Ron is dead myself, and I'm wondering if you're doing anything to find that out, or if at this point you're just going to continue on the basis that he is and proceed with whatever you do.
The question is Ron dead, and what am I doing about it? Well, it's a bit, when I first got called on the telephone, and someone said to me, they've released a statement that L. Ron Hubbard's dead. And I knew nothing about it. But given the mystery that's been created, the fact that he's been hiding, they say he's in seclusion. The man died in a motorhome. And no disrespect to Mr. Hubbard, but he died in a motorhome, and the lawyers were brought up immediately, apparently from what I read, before he died, and he was cremated within 24 hours, according to what I read, so there could be no autopsy. And I know for a fact, from evidence in the record, that he was a very sick man for many years. And the falsehoods that have been created, that he was a healthy, supremely healthy person, that he causatively caused his death, it's nonsense. The man suffered from numerous pulmonary embolisms. He had severe pulmonary problems. Starting in at least 1979, that I know from a fact, from his personal medical advisor, Kema Douglas, he was on large doses of Coumadin, a blood-thinning drug, because of his pulmonary problems. He suffered numerous health ailments. He was maniacal about having his clothes washed in 13 buckets of water to remove soap, and his allergies. And he had a host of ailments that we all suffer from. He was a human being. So the falsehoods that could get created about how he died and his health, and I think the record should correct them. But when I first got called, my immediate reaction, because of my knowledge of what's going on, and that there's this large investigation that's been going on, and in a suit, in my own suit in Boston, in September 1985, or October 1985, they filed an affidavit dated in September 1985, saying that he was the target of a criminal prosecution. This is the church, the Miscavige Company. And he was going to take the Fifth Amendment, assert his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, if he was called to testify in a deposition that we were trying to conduct of him. And although the IRS tells me nothing, they're a governmental agency, and they will give me no information, since I represent numerous people who give them information, Gerry, Armstrong, Laurel, Sullivan, Howard, Schomer, I can get a feel from the questions that they're asking them where their investigation's going. And I began to get the feel that things were really getting close. And that there were going to be, I got the feel that there were going to be numerous indictments. And I got the feeling that they would include L. Ron Hubbard. Because his own people filed an affidavit saying he was the target of criminal prosecution, it was going to take the Fifth. And the next thing I know, in 4 years of mystery surrounding where he is and who's in contact with him and the hidden data line and time-elapsing ink and crazy issues. As soon as I heard, I found it incredible that he would die right now. So I said to some reporters, the coincidence, and apparently there are some reporters here, and they know that I said this to them. I find it incredible, the timing of this thing. And I'd like to know, why wasn't he hospitalized? Why did Eugene Dink disappear in May 1984 when I tried to subpoena him during the Armstrong case? What were the indications for his hospitalization? Was he on life support systems? What medications was he taking? What were the facts surrounding the death of this man who's created this organization? You people have a right to know. So I said to the press, I'd like to know. I'd like to know whether it's a hoax. I'd like to know whether this is true. Is he dead? I'd like to know who identified the body. So knowing nothing about it when I was first contacted, having spoken to no one, except a few reporters who first called me, I raised those questions. And I said, the timing is so incredible that this warrants further scrutiny. Well, Earl Cooley, their new lawyer, sued me last week for saying I've defamed him because, in nothing I've said in any press release, as the press knows, have I ever mentioned Earl Cooley's name. Haven't even mentioned it. Simply by questioning the events surrounding his death and whether it was true or not, or whether it was a hoax, Cooley is claiming in this lawsuit that because I raised these questions and said it might be a hoax, I brought into question his truth or veracity and maligned him, so he sued me. I have yet to sue any Scientology lawyer. They've sued me 13 to 17 times. I've never sued any one of them. Now, is he dead? The San Luis Obispo coroner says he's dead. They said that an independent verification of his fingerprints, blood type, and photographs were taken. And then documents were presented and waved around by the lawyers who were present, including Mr. Cooley. There were wills and a certificate of religious preference that he didn't want an autopsy done. And the certificate of religious preference was dated a week before that. And he causatively died one day after he created another will on top of numerous prior wills that had been created. But now it turns out there might have been a stroke at least a week before he actually died. It also turns out there was a period of at least 12 to 24 hours before they even notified the coroner of the death. The blood gets old very quickly. So I have loads of questions about what medications were in his blood. And many drugs have very short half-lives. As many toxicologists, if any of you here are lab technicians, toxicologists know. And they disappear very quickly. And the blood breaks down after death. So oftentimes it's very difficult to trace some drugs. Others you can trace for longer periods. But there are loads of issues that are raised. And he was cremated in 24 hours with a few lawyers around. And given all the facts and circumstances surrounding this man's life, I find that inappropriate. I don't think the evidence should have been removed like that. But apparently the coroner had no choice because of this certificate and because Dr. Dink was present. So I accept at this point, on the face of the evidence, as a lawyer, I accept that L. Ron Hubbard is dead. But I have seen, in the years of litigating with the church, such as the frame-up of me on the $2 million check, a willingness to go to so many bizarre ends to suppress facts, that I would always leave the door open in my mind for further inquiry. Yes, sir.
When I got my refund check from the Church of Scientology, on the back of it was a little statement that said that I was waiving my rights to further suits as a result of the services that I had received at the church. How would that affect my status should I wish to be a member of the class action suit?
Badly.
Okay, he asked, when he received his refund or repayment check from the Church of Scientology, there was a statement on Church of Scientology. There was a statement on the back that said he waived all rights to sue the Church of Scientology, and he wants to know if that would affect his class action suit.
All right, now, as far as individual situations in the class action suit, such as signing releases, waivers, harassment to you personally, representations made to you that you believed in, every person's individual situation is going to have to be reviewed. I am not a California lawyer. I've litigated, for example, the Armstrong case in California, that I was admitted on a discretionary basis to try that case. Local lawyers will have to be hired, who will have to be paid. And that's why this group is trying to raise money, because you've got to hire local counsel. The local counsel will have to review situations such as yours to determine whether in your individual situation where you stand, even though you can't get your money back, for example, because you signed that release, which you took money in consideration of, should you get your PC files back? All those issues need to be addressed. The validity of a waiver or a release is not a simple thing. If your PC files have subsequently been culled or used, you would still have a live action. Those individual situations need to be addressed, and I cannot answer them at this podium in a broad sense tonight.
I'd like to add that you can go ahead and sign the pledge and join the suit. If you're not sure you're qualified, that will be taken up later.
Well,
yes, sir.
I came tonight to listen to you and to make up my mind. I've already signed my name on the class action, but I have a request.
Fire away.
I don't do anything hiddenly, and I'm very well known in Orange County and the Los Angeles area. I would like a scroll for those of us who desire to publicly sign and have my name published that I'm on it.
All right. Taking up on this gentleman's point, in the 1770s in this country, there were people who were Englishmen who obeyed King George and obeyed the Church of England, who felt repression, who went to the king and said, lighten up on the oppression. And the king gave them more oppression. They were confronted as human beings with some very simple issues. Do I live as a man? And by that I mean as a woman too. Do I live as a free Thetan, a liberated human being who confronts data and continues to grow in consciousness, in intellect, in emotional strength, in that confrontation? And once I recognized, such as those colonists recognized, that they could no longer live as free human beings, under that oppression, they declared their independence. And they got a scroll together. And they said that we believe that men have inalienable rights. And the government is created for the people. And when the government turns on the people and begins to oppress the people, it is no longer valid government, because we are the people and we are the government. You people are the church. You should declare your independence from oppression. If nothing else, you should sign to say, I'm free.
Jack?
Yes. Two things. Ask a California lawyer what happens if instead of signing a check, putting your name on the back of a check, you use a rubber stamp saying deposit to account such and such. Ask them if this means that the check, that you are not agreeing to any conditions or such on the check. I don't know, but ask a lawyer about that. That's one thing. Second thing, many, many decades ago, Dorothy Parker, you may have heard the name Dorothy Parker, was told that Calvin Coolidge was dead. And her reply was, how can they tell?
Did everyone hear the latter part of that?
Didn't get on the tape.
This gentleman said that Dorothy Parker was asked years ago whether Calvin Coolidge was dead. Was told. And her response was, how can they tell? Now, a California lawyer would have to be asked whether putting a rubber stamp on the back of a check constitutes sufficient disagreement with the underlying basis for which the check was given, so that you in effect had a reservation of rights in terms of whether you could still sue for any other monies that were owed you or other legal rights that you had. Mr. Kilborn here laughed as I did because it's a technical question. And many things in the law are not gray and white. They're extremely complex, and they flow with the facts in the situation, each individual situation. So it's very difficult, without a full analysis of an individual problem, to give a legal opinion, which, as I've indicated tonight, I can't do. What I can categorically tell you is you have a legal basis for a class action suit. Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask whether Ron's body could have been cryogenically stored for a while.
We want to know if Ron's body could have been cryogenically stored.
It raises an interesting point. If in the and I've got to remember quickly here, and I'm not remembering, in the autobiography of a yogi, supposedly, and I'm trying to, Yogananda, supposedly Yogananda, very spiritually enlightened and elevated man in unity consciousness, supposedly a very gentle man. Supposedly, his body, his material, corporeal body, months at least, maybe perhaps years after he died, was still completely intact with no aid of drugs that would preserve it. Formaldehyde. If you believe, for example, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, you might believe that the spirit so permeated his being that being preserved his physical body. I personally do not discount that possibility in having a great deal of affinity to the Hindu religion, and a great deal of affinity to the Yoga Sutras. I personally can understand in my approach to those things that could take place. Others may disagree with me. If L. Ron Hubbard was a big being whose consciousness so permeated his being, then he could be self-cryogenically kept, potentially for a period of time. Aside from that, there's a very practical solution, which they do every day, of putting a person on ice, where you preserve the evidence.
I think he's actually in a home for retired Eagle Scouts. Well, only those who are blood brother to the befooning Black Indians.
Retired Eagle Scout.
I've got to get some of these people in the back. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know, or get an idea from you, I know it's going to be hard, some kind of a timetable for achieving some of the goals of the suit, particularly with regard to the receivership and, number 3, removing David et al. From control.
He's asked for a timetable for the class action suit.
As a practical matter, as strong as you become in terms of raising money and hiring local counsel, in terms of getting together the documents, the pleadings, the legal talent, the vitality of your suit will be proportionately strong, and the time element, as a practical matter, will be that much expedited by talented lawyers in an injunctive or equitable type of lawsuit to get redress for some of the issues, such as the PC files, in rapid fashion. It is difficult, if not impossible, for me to tell you, because of the nature of the law, because of the way courts control the legal system, because of the armies of lawyers that may be fighting you. And in that sense, you do not have an easy task. But neither did the Allies. Neither did the Americans after Pearl Harbor, when they had lost their whole Pacific Fleet. But what you do have is you've got the creed, you've got numbers, you are the church, you can create the vitality, you can create a movement that may bring them even to the bargaining table so that they give you your PC files before the litigation ever even terminates, so that they give an accounting. But one practical answer to you is this. At the outset of the lawsuit that is contemplated, there would be preliminary relief sought right at the beginning to prevent harassment, to enjoin those people from committing harassment, to identify the PC files and hold them separately, perhaps by the court, to impound funds, secure bank accounts, until a full hearing on the merits has taken place. That type of preliminary expedited relief you can pursue, and I believe you will win
no matter how long the litigation takes.
I'd like to say, too, that I and my husband are part of a group who asked Mike to come. And if anything should happen to either of us, it will not affect the class action suit. The rest of the group will carry on it as if we were part of it.
Amen.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Regarding who owns the church, please address that. The question is, would it be the purpose of the suit to destroy and dismantle the church or put it back in the hands of Scientology?
Good question. What this gentleman wants to know is, what is the purpose of the suit? To destroy the church and destroy L. Ron Hubbard by dragging his name through the mud? Or to put it back in hands that will follow the creed? Is that a fair statement? The purpose, as I said, is to correct injustices, to repay the funds for people who want them repaid, to return PC files to people who want their PC files back, to enjoin harassment, to seek an accounting, and if those people who are in control have breached their fiduciary responsibilities, to remove them. Now, as a practical matter, to answer this gentleman's question, the bank accounts, the buildings, as he pointed out, the classes are ongoing. They still exist. So as a practical matter, who administers? Who becomes management? And the answer is, the court can appoint a receiver to monitor management, to prevent fiduciary breaches. So that if, for example, it is found that David Miscavige or Norman Starkey or Pat Croker, whoever, have breached fiduciary responsibilities and are removed, the court can decide who should at least monitor the assets, the buildings. And in that sense, the church could continue during the purpose of the suit, during the process of the suit. If ultimately it is determined that all the money is returned and all the PC files are returned and there are no assets left, and that people don't want that kind of a church, then in the sense that you visualize the church over there, there'd be no church. But in the sense that there are people like yourselves who want a church, who want to follow the creed, you'll have a church. And you'll have the money to run the church. What the law can do for you is to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to render unto God the things that are God's. For all those concrete overts that are legally cognizable, it can correct those problems. What the law cannot do is interfere in church administration on religious matters. But just for a moment, let's look into that. David Mayo is being sued because he created what we'll call a splinter church, who believed that he had the right to practice Scientology, as the creed says. David says that his is the true Scientology. David Miscavige, who says that I have to charge $500,000 or whatever, $87,000 per solo knots through the levels, that's Scientology. The church, run by David Miscavige, which says that I am destroying religion, which says that the law should have no part in how churches are run and should not interfere with churches. That church with David Miscavige, who preaches in freedom all the time, those premises, has sued in a court of law what I understand to be a very able and spiritually energetic man, David Mayo, who had the courage, notwithstanding his allegiance and affinity to L. Ron Hubbard, notwithstanding all of the things that he built, he had the courage to leave and to pursue the creed. And now this church with David Miscavige says to this church with David Mayo, the law says, and we're going to use the law because we've got all these lawyers and all this money to prevent you from doing OT3 and solo knots or whatever you want to do. Because your religious exercise is wrong. And our religious exercise is right. That's why there was a Declaration of Independence. That's why the Pilgrims left England. Religious oppression in the history of man, if you really analyze it, does not generally arise from the secular realm. It arises from other religions who say, our religion is the true religion. Scientology is the only method of achieving ultimate freedom. There are no other religions. If you don't obey Scientology, you are a suppressive person. If you don't believe in Scientology, you're an SP, fair game. Religions have always done that to other people who sought to correct injustices in religious institutions when they saw them. David Mayo, I submit, was a courageous person. The church now tries to prevent him from exercising his religious rights with the law that they say shouldn't even be used in religious affairs. It's ridiculous. The whole premise is ridiculous. The inconsistency, the falsehoods, the lack of common sense in their position, I submit, is obvious to anyone. And it is proof in the pudding that you people are the church, that you people have the right to have these questions answered. To answer the last part of his point, if in your class you think it is appropriate to inquire into representations or misrepresentations about L. Ron Hubbard's background, it is your choice. Would L. Ron Hubbard have called it dragging his name through the mud? When you, in an auditing session, are worked over by an auditor, to use that term, is your name being dragged through the mud? Is what you've done being dragged through the mud? Your intention and the auditor's intention is to help you by confronting the mud in your lives so that you can get rid of the mud. If you did this, perhaps L. Ron Hubbard's legacy would be that, yes, the man lied, but I've lied too. He screwed up, but I've screwed up too. But he kept striving and working, and he had a lot of problems in his life. and he had to work very hard to overcome them. And he worked so hard that he did create some tech that sometimes worked for him and sometimes didn't work for him. And eventually, his problems got bigger than his own solutions, which it happens to all of us cyclically in our lives. But if what he created in the tech was bigger than the lies, then that will be the legacy. And his name will not be dragged through the mud. Your class will evidence that there are bigger issues, that life for fair works, that self-confrontation works, that seeking after expansion of your consciousness works, and that those are more important than whether he was a war hero. And that's what will happen. And that will be the legacy. And one further point. If the Armstrong documents continue to be concealed, the foreign bank accounts continue to be controlled, the private investigators continue to be used, the armies of lawyers continue to suppress the documents, the legacy will be that suppression and that control and that manipulation and that greed and that intolerance. And people will say that L. Ron Hubbard, who copyrighted the fair game doctrine, left a bigger legacy with the fair game doctrine than he left with OT3, which he copyrighted. It's in your hands. If David Miscavige and this group that is currently doing what they're doing don't communicate with you, don't solve these problems, continue to suppress your PC files for their own use, don't refund your funds, don't correct the injustices, that will be the legacy. If you people roll over on your backs, you will do a disservice to L. Ron Hubbard's tech. But you will leave intact his fair game doctrine.
It's interesting that I'm here. I'm a public Scientologist. I could actually cry right now. It's so unbelievable. When I started off in Scientology, when someone said help, I couldn't believe someone said help. No one had to worry about me being pushed away. When someone said there was a chance for help, I was happy. I finally found a place that gave me, could give me help. By the way, I read the book, and then I said, that indicates, and I said, give me help. It's not like I did chant a few things, did a few other things that it didn't indicate. The book indicated. So I got the help, and I got up the bridge as a public, and I felt I didn't feel comfortable. You know why I didn't feel comfortable? Because I was out there making money, and I saw staff, and they're so serious, and they're working so hard, and here I'm out there making money. It's not that difficult because my ability was getting more and more, and so it was easy to make money. And I felt uncomfortable. I didn't feel, I showed a lot of ARC because I had, it was restored very quickly. But it bothered me that staff was working so hard and I couldn't contribute. And then I didn't feel comfortable with management, so I didn't even know what the word resign meant. I didn't feel comfortable about something that was going on. It wasn't management. So I just said in a resignation, not knowing what the word meant, well, look, I want to leave for a while because I got to find out what's going on. I don't feel comfortable. I got to locate it. And then I found out that resign meant something really terrible. I used the wrong word. Then I found out some other people had left, and I spoke to them, and I found out they were declared suppressive. And then no one really knows, but I had a tremendous amount of ARC, and I was very appreciated. So I had a suppressive declare put on me because when someone who's very ARC leaves a group, and by the way, I love this group, individuals in the group have a policy. You dead agent the person, so they did. They effectively dead agented me, including a couple of contracts I had with Scientologists. And I never felt comfortable because, I love those people in the church. I mean, some of them saved my life. I love staff, in or out of the church. I love Ron Hubbard. I don't care if he, I don't care what he did, because I love the tech that gave me the freedom. And now, this is the first time, I mean, I also wanted to, it's funny, Mark Jones did something that I was in agreement with, but I didn't have the courage. I wanted to see if something could be done within the church. He had the courage, I didn't. At that time, I hadn't reached the state of courage yet. By the way, I'm speaking from something else, by the way, something that Scientologists have been accused of. They speak from their mind. Well, about 10 days ago, I had what we call the heart release. And I'm doing a book about it, so if any of you feel that you're still a little bit too much in your mind, there'll be a book to help you get into the heart more. But what I'm trying to say is this. I feel good because now I do have the courage, and I do believe that if I have any chance of taking part in something that will save the church, and save the tech, and put honor back into L. Ron Hubbard's name, okay, this is something that has the possibility. I don't want the money. I'll right now take any money that comes to me, if it's okay, I will put it towards the new church, the Church of Scientology. As long as I know that the people are running it, I can walk into their space. And my intuition is such now that I think I might be able to tell 1-1. As long as I have an e-meetup. So what I want to say is what's really important to me and what I care about, and now I have the courage to, get involved. If there's anybody out there, okay, who's worried about hurting L. Ron Hubbard, hurting the church, hurting the text, this is their last chance to salvage it. It's what he's been trying to tell you, but I'm not going to put dishonor on you. He's a lawyer. I've been dealing with lawyers for the last, they're going to make me rich soon, by the way. They, unfortunately, is dealing with so many PTS situations, it's hard to get into the heart. I mean, luckily he has a wonderful wife. He's insane from all the PTS he has to deal with. So if you really care to salvage the text, salvage the church, salvage L. Ron Hubbard, don't just get involved. Speak somehow. Get it together to speak to the people you know who feel that, we're going to drag Ron's name through the mud. We're going to bring down the church. If we have any chance to salvage the church, and by the way, there is what you call intuition. People can see the future. And I knew that the only chance that the church has, and the tech has, and I'm not talking about 6 million Scientologists. That was nothing. I couldn't believe that they kept telling me 6 million Scientologists. I felt the tech working. And I couldn't tell you all the releases. And by the way, they're going to be forever. They're not going to be lost because no one's ever going to validate my case game anymore. Not even me. So,
thank you, Mike.
Okay, I can go on forever, but...
That's too much to repeat at all. But he told us his story and how he left the church and how he was afraid in many ways, but still loved what was good. And that now he feels, with what we're doing, he has the courage, and he feels that he has hope that we can restore the honor of what is good, what we have from Scientology and Ron Hubbard.
Well said. Yes, sir. I don't know yet. There have been lawsuits where that's been done. Jim Jones, for one. The Jonestown litigation. And the fellow whose name was now escaping me, who left and was in Puerto Rico for a while, and Vesco. They succeeded in getting some of his money back from foreign bank accounts. How easy or difficult it's going to be, I don't know at this point. Court orders can be issued to return those funds. The degree of enforceability of those court orders is troublesome because they're overseas banks. But the church is not just the bank accounts. The church is the copyrights, the books, the buildings, but more importantly, the people. And the people, as they swell up and control this situation, ultimately will control those bank accounts. How long it will take, I don't know. Yes, sir.
I find it amazing that Hubbard could be dead, buried, and mad in such a short period of time. Wouldn't the government be extremely suspicious? How many rich people that are old and sick are going to suddenly be imagined within 24 hours? I can't believe that there's not an investigation ongoing. That's the first part, and then there's the answer.
He asked a question about L. Ron Hubbard's Denise.
If you talk to people who were around L. Ron Hubbard in prior periods of time, such as Jameson Kelsey, who was with him in New York City in 1973, when he was hiding from the French government who had indicted him, large amounts of cash were kept at his disposal. If you believe the testimony of Kema Douglas in the Armstrong trial, that she personally was involved in transporting huge sums of cash in and out of bank accounts and within banks themselves. There may be funds in huge amounts that can never be accounted for, that would raise the suspicion of most governmental agencies, most heirs, most people like yourself who were interested in those things because you gave the money. And so if these large sums of cash were, for example, at the disposal of Pat Croker and David Miscavige in the last year of L. Ron Hubbard's life, and we're dealing with perhaps hundreds of thousands, millions in cash, it would be an appropriate subject of inquiry to determine whether, in fact, those sums were available within the weeks around his death, who had control over them, what was done with them, what, if any, motive. And in the criminal law, the method of dealing with criminal activity is MOM, motive, opportunity, and means. So motive, money can be a powerful motive. People kill for money. We see it you read in the newspaper about it every day. I am not suggesting that they killed L. Ron Hubbard for his money. I'm simply responding to your question, saying that issues such as this, because of known evidence about L. Ron Hubbard's health, known evidence about the location of huge sums of cash within his disposal, known items of this type, when you know that they're willing to pay $250,000 to try to set up a federal judge, are items that should be inquired into. What, if any, governmental agencies will? I don't know, sir. Should they? Yes. Will I make an effort to have it done? Yes. One of the myths that was perpetuated for years to you people about the FBI, the government, the big bad government trying to take away your right to use the E-meter in the E-meter 1971 case, and the FBI doing those awful things in raiding a church and taking all those documents. One of the myths of government in this country, and it's not that there are not abuses in government, we read about them, we know there are abuses, and our society allows for the exposure of them, free speech, the removal of Nixons who perpetrate abuses, because we have free speech and because people can look into them. But one of the myths of government in this country is that it is so all-powerful that it is destroying organizations like the church that are seeking truth, and that the FBI is trying to prevent truth from occurring. Most governmental agencies, as those of you who have tried to complain about harassment know, are bureaucracies. You can't get these people off their butts. You can go in with them with a smoking gun, and oftentimes they'll confront you with, so what? So the myth that the government has been trying to destroy L. Ron Hubbard is just a myth. It is the people who have felt victimized who went to governmental agencies in the 50s when they represented it would cure something, who felt defrauded, that began to try to get governments interested. It was people like the numerous people who've come out in the last 4 or 5 years and said, no, they shouldn't be paying $250,000 to set up federal judges. That gets them a little interested, so they begin to inquire, and as soon as they inquire, you get a Freedom magazine saying the IRS is trying to destroy the church. It's ridiculous. Second part.
Second part, what helped me a lot is when I ran through all the rhetoric, because I get lots of their stuff, was I got a hold of the transcripts of the Armstrong trial, and I read them very thoroughly several times, and I was absolutely amazed at the court's ability to actually ascertain facts. Mary Sue Hubbard came out badly. I mean, I went through the questions where you, the counter lawyers, were doing their discovery thing, and it was amazing. There's no way if you get transcripts that you can't make up your mind about the huge amount of fraud.
He mentions in...
These people that were here tonight, if they were made to sit down,
right,
it's terrible, and read through the word clear a little bit,
right,
they just wouldn't be acting like they were. Now, can we get transcripts of the 39 million? They're sealed all the time. They're hidden, which makes no sense. It's a public document. Under the Bill of Rights, I don't understand.
Okay. All right, what this gentleman wants to know is, you have the Armstrong transcript and you have the Christopherson transcript, and the church is constantly trying to keep all this stuff sealed. And can you read them? And if you did, and if people who had been here tonight had read this stuff, if they sat down for 11 weeks and read and listened, the date is so hard and so good, you can't help but come away that someone's perpetrating a massive lie about where the money's going, what the money's being used for, what their true motives are, aside from the validity of the text, which never even comes up in these cases, such as the Armstrong case. So he wants to know, can you get and can you read? You can get the Armstrong transcript. The trial was 5 or 6 weeks long. It's a massive document. You can read it. If you sat down and read it from cover to cover, and more importantly, if you could look at the 500 exhibits, some of which one exhibit alone are like 2,000 pages. And you could read this massive material that covers years. You know that it's not falsified. It's not created by some mythical governmental agency to ruin the repute of L. Ron Hubbard of the church. That is so ridiculous in the face of the common sense and reality of the evidence. It becomes inescapable that all these lies, that what I'm telling you is true. It becomes inescapable. Now, we've only got a few more minutes, and one thing I would like you to do, which could be very helpful. We're going to hand out some pieces of paper. You don't have to do it tonight. You can take them, you can get them back to Valerie. Some of you may have no incidents of harassment. Some of you may have just telephone, little subtle things. But we would like you to write down any incidents that have occurred in your lives which you did not want done to you, which were foisted upon you by the organization under its current management. Whether it's the failure to return your PC files when requested, destroying them, using them, not giving you your money back, not doing things that you thought were appropriate, or just overtly harassing you. Now, there's so many of you, there may be very few instances of real hard, cold harassment. There may be other instances where there's a lot, such as to Mr. Notaro and to others. But if there are any, if you could write them down and give them to Valerie, they would be very helpful. No matter how insignificant you might think they are, they would be very helpful. You can get the Armstrong transcript. You can get it from Brenda Yates. I believe it's available, but I'm not quite sure whether they got it sealed or not. I'm not sure, but something in me tells me they tried and they did not get it, but I'm just not sure.
The Armstrong transcripts, you can get an excerpted version, which is only 200 pages long, which you can buy for somewhere between $25 and $50.
I got that in the Armstrong, but I meant the other one.
That can be easily found out, and you can ask Valerie. Yes, ma'am.
You used an interesting term here tonight, and I believe the church used the same phrase on their video. The term being positively left his body. That sticks with me a bit. By definition, or by legal definition, is that suicide?
She asked if causatively leaving your body was considered legally suicide.
There are many ways to say things. And there are many ways to look at facts, and they get interpreted in our own consciousness. And sometimes what is a pile of cow dung to one person may be the chips for a fire for a Hindu mystic. The motives and intent behind the people in making the observations then become critical. If he causatively left his body under circumstances that most people in simple, plain language would say suicide, that would be one way to interpret what has been said. It would be a way to explain what occurred in their language. The circumstances would then become critical of why it happened, and whether it was done as such a high fader that he just dropped the body, as they say, or whether it was done like other people who jump off bridges because they've given up hope. They're lost. Their lives have become lies. And they find nothing in their spirit that keeps them going. If I were a Scientologist, that would become a fundamental inquiry for me. To know the answer to that question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the photographs that were supposedly taken of L. Ron Hubbard's body, are those in the possession of the coroner, and can they be made public?
We are going to make an effort to obtain all of the evidence that surrounds what I consider to be extremely bizarre circumstances surrounding his death, including the photographs, the blood samples, etc. Yes, sir.
Let's suppose that the top leadership of the church get removed for breach of trust or whatever. I wonder what would be a good way to prevent this reoccurring. I was thinking perhaps election of the leadership of the church and that
Democracy. Yes, sir.
Do you have to live in the state of California to file or be part of this class action suit?
No. Anywhere in the world.
You can live anywhere in the world to be part of this suit.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to litigate class action?
He asked if Mike Flynn was going to litigate.
Am I going to become involved? Yes. Yes, ma'am. Good question. I don't know yet.
She asked what court the suit's going to be brought in.
Either the L.A. Federal District Court, the L.A. Superior Court, which is the state court, or the Tampa Federal District Court where Flag is, for international Scientologists.
Can people be added after the suit is started?
Oh, yes.
People can be added after the suit is started.
Right. As a practical matter, the court will control notification to members, potential members, all of those issues. Once you get your group together, the court will then monitor all of those issues. Yes, sir.
We have a target on how many dollars and people are needed to get it going.
They ask for targets on names and money.
The more money you can raise, the more vitality you will give to the suit. Because local lawyers are going to want cash retainers. And they're going to want a lot, because the case is going to be heavily litigated. Upfront money, a minimum of $50,000. Long-term money, $200,000 and more. Get off the ground money to just perhaps file anywhere between $25,000 and $50,000. But even if you collected $25,000, you would have to know that within a very short period of time, you'd need $50,000. Because the church, and see, this will give you some magnitude of what you're dealing with. In one case alone, the church, by my own estimates, of the many suits being litigated, with the 10 and 12 or 12 lawyers they've had involved, has spent millions of your money to prevent Paulette Cooper from having her day in court, to prevent Lavenda Van Schaik, Tanya Bird, from having their days in court, to put Gerry Armstrong through what he was put through. They are powerful. They have huge amounts of money. They can hire endless lawyers. So you have to become powerful. But you created it. And you can become equally, if not greater power, more powerful, because right is now on your side. Yes, sir.
How many people? I have two questions. One is, what will be the effect of this suit on the existing suit, on the existing case brought on with the mail? What will be the effect?
Good question. Real positive.
He asked about the effect of this case on other litigation that's going on.
The David Mayo suit is a very important lawsuit because it involves freedom to use the Knots material that those people and that David paid for. It's imperative that David win that lawsuit. One of the fundamental issues that should have been addressed in my judgment in that lawsuit had I been involved was who owns Knots? The issues were cast that the church owned them, that David participated in the creation of them, but that he basically reconstructed them after he left. That is not the cast that should have been created. The cast that should have been created is that David owned them. His members own them. The church doesn't own them any more than he does. The challenge that should have been mounted on a multi-dimensional basis at the outset of that lawsuit was you're suing me saying I can't use Knots. I'm suing you saying you don't own Knots. We own Knots. There are pleadings that potentiate that cast, but that is not actually what occurred in the suit. In the framework of the pleadings and the framework of the evidence was not created in that way. I believe David is still going to win on appeal because the law is in his favor. I hope, and I have not seen the record yet, that was created so far in the litigation to support his appellate claims, his claims on appeal. But if the record is sufficient, and I hope, and being an anti-religious person, I pray that he win the lawsuit. The class, even if he loses, could come along and say, the church does not own not. You could help David Mayo's suit. You could challenge ownership.
Gerry?
I just want to know, the people who are remaining anonymous and who wish to remain anonymous, how long can they remain anonymous before they're going to have to come out with laws and say, hey, I am part of the suit?
How long can anonymous people remain anonymous in this suit?
It's a very interesting question. In the 1770s, there were many people who owned farms, big farms, and had a lot to lose if they sided with George Washington and Alexander Hamilton and the others. They stood to lose their farms, their lives, to be hanged. There were many, I'm sure, who were on the fence after Yorktown, even after the Articles of Confederation, even after it appeared that the colonists were going to win. Truth and freedom are jealous mistresses in their powerful elixirs. And if you believe in them, as those early people did, you sign the scroll at the outset. Some may be more timid, but for those who want truth and justice, you come out of the closet now. You don't stay on the fence. You recognize the injustices and you correct them. If you don't have the courage to do it now, as this gentleman talked about, then again I pray that you'll have the courage in the future.
Thank you.
Police protection for a little while for those of you who are leaving. We'd like you all to leave at the same time. For those of you who haven't yet filled out your pledges, scribble your name on that right now and hand it over to anyone on the steering committee. In the back, they're making copies of the tape. You can purchase them now. Thank you very much for coming.
Legally. It's all neat.